The first time anyone noticed the poor woman at the cemetery, the morning fog was still clinging to the ground like a secret. She knelt beside a modest headstone with chipped edges, placing fresh white flowers with hands that trembled from cold and exhaustion. She came every Sunday without fail, rain or shine, dressed in the same faded coat, whispering prayers to a grave that did not bear her name. No one knew why she came, and no one imagined that one quiet Sunday, her ritual would collide with a truth powerful enough to change 3 broken lives forever. Before the story unfolds any further, take a moment. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of compassion, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that even the smallest acts of love can echo louder than wealth or status. Her name was Margaret Wilson, and she lived in a one-room apartment above a closed-down grocery store in a small town in Ohio. The walls were thin, the heater unreliable, and the nights often longer than she could bear. Margaret worked 6 days a week cleaning offices downtown, her knees aching from scrubbing floors that gleamed for people who would never know her name. Sunday was her only day off, yet she never rested. Instead, she saved a few dollars from her weekly pay to buy flowers and took the early bus to the cemetery on the edge of town. She walked the last mile when the bus route ended, shoes worn thin, heart heavy but determined. The grave belonged to a woman named Rebecca Collins. To the world, Rebecca was remembered as a beloved philanthropist, a devoted wife, and a graceful presence at charity galas. Her photo had once appeared in magazines beside her husband, a powerful CEO named Jonathan Collins, a man whose name was associated with steel skyscrapers, billion-dollar deals, and boardrooms that shaped cities. When Rebecca died suddenly in a car accident, the nation mourned briefly, then moved on. Jonathan retreated into his work, building higher walls around his grief, convinced that money could outpace memory. Margaret's connection to Rebecca was invisible to everyone else. Years ago, when Margaret had lost her own husband, Thomas, to illness, she had nearly lost herself as well. Drowning in medical bills and loneliness, she had once collapsed outside a church food pantry. Rebecca, passing by unnoticed in a simple coat, had stopped. She had helped Margaret up, listened to her story without judgment, and quietly paid for Thomas's medication for the final months of his life. Rebecca never asked for gratitude, never returned for praise. She simply said that love should never be a transaction. When Thomas died, Margaret held on to that kindness as the last warm thing in a world gone cold. When Margaret later learned of Rebecca's death, she felt a debt she could never repay. Flowers were all she could offer, a fragile symbol of gratitude and remembrance. Each Sunday she knelt and prayed not only for Rebecca's soul, but for her own strength to keep going. Over time, her health declined, her job cut hours, her landlord raised rent. Still, the flowers never stopped coming. Sometimes they were wildflowers picked from the roadside. Sometimes they were wilted carnations bought on discount. What mattered was that they were there. One Sunday in late autumn, the cemetery looked different. Black sedans lined the entrance, and security stood near a polished marble monument not far from Rebecca's grave. Jonathan Collins had arrived unexpectedly, driven by a restlessness he could not explain. For months, he had avoided this place, believing that distance would dull the pain. But grief does not obey logic. It grows in silence. As he walked toward his wife's grave, he noticed something that stopped him cold. Fresh flowers lay at the base of the headstone, delicate and carefully arranged. His heart tightened. He had not brought them. No one in his circle ever did. Margaret was there that morning, as always, unaware of who stood behind her. When she finished her prayer and rose slowly, her eyes met Jonathan's for the first time. She saw a tall man in an expensive coat, his face drawn with a sorrow that wealth could not soften. He saw a frail woman, startled and ashamed, as if she had been caught trespassing. The truth spilled out without accusation or anger. This grave belonged to his wife, and to her, it belonged to the woman who had once saved her family from despair. Jonathan listened as Margaret explained everything, tears tracing lines through years of hardship. She spoke of kindness given freely, of dignity restored in the darkest hour, of flowers as a promise kept. The realization crushed him. His wife's compassion had reached farther than he ever knew. While he built empires, she had built hope. From that day on, Jonathan's visits became regular. He learned Margaret's story fully, not as charity, but as shared humanity. When he discovered she was facing eviction, he did not offer a check. Instead, he arranged stable housing near the cemetery, a place where she could walk without pain. He ensured her medical needs were met, and quietly funded a small community program in Rebecca's name, helping widows like Margaret find support and work. He did not do this to erase guilt, but to honor the legacy of love his wife had lived by. Margaret never stopped bringing flowers, but now she was no longer alone. Jonathan would stand beside her in silence, two lives bound by the same loss, learning that grief shared becomes lighter. Over time, Margaret's back straightened, her eyes brighter. She volunteered at the very program created in Rebecca's memory, offering comfort to others who felt forgotten. Jonathan stepped back from relentless ambition, rediscovering purpose not in profit, but in presence. Just before the ending of this story, take a moment to comment below. Tell us where you are watching from, and whether you believe small acts of kindness can truly change lives. Your words matter more than you think. On the anniversary of Rebecca's death, the cemetery was filled with flowers from dozens of people helped by the foundation. Margaret placed her bouquet as she always had, hand steady now, heart full. Jonathan watched the scene, understanding at last that love does not end at the grave. It multiplies through the lives it touches. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps keep stories of compassion alive, reminding the world that even the poorest offering, given with love, can stand beside the grandest legacy and shine just as brightly.